All right, well, we'll get started. We have a wonderful, as you guys know, we've been trying to get people to come in and talk to us about things that are happening in our community. And Peg has done really great work looking for some speakers, and she found us this one, and we're thrilled to have him. It is United Way. I was involved with that when I was a teacher in Baldwin. We had a United Way, and I was telling him this, a committee that we hit people up for United Way donations, and we'd get monthly donations or sometimes independent, like $25 or whatever, and it was a thing that we organized as teachers to do it. But United Way has gone through some changes that had to do with COVID. They're rebuilding, they're back, but they are connected in so many ways with a lot of the small and larger volunteer organizations in our community and other services that get funding through United Way. So it's really a window into a lot of the things that I think most of us would all care about, the services that are needed for folks who really need them in a variety of ways. So I am excited to introduce Steve McCarthy, who's the Executive Director for United Way St. Croix Valley.
Well, thanks so much. What a pleasure to be here with you all tonight. I should wear a t-shirt that says, I work for Alice. So we'll talk about a lot of the things that United Way does. We'll talk about some of our nonprofit partners. We'll talk about the impact that we make. But really, the conceptual framework is really Alice. And I'll talk about that here in just a moment. And there's going to be a lot of facts and figures here. And I'm going to pause a couple of different times because I want those numbers to sink in. And I want you to just think about it. So what is ALICE? That's an acronym. It stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained Employed. Asset Limited, Income Constrained Employed. When I was young, I mean, they used to call that the working poor. There was just another name for it. And go ahead, you can go ahead and advance. And one more. In St. Croix County, we'll talk about that. ALICE is far beyond St. Croix County. ALICE is really all over the country, but we'll talk here about St. Croix County, and the St. Croix County numbers are a little bit skewed just because of our relative wealth here. Our county population is almost 100,000. And you look at the number of households, it is almost 37,000. It's probably a little bit more than that right now. These are our 2021 figures. Why 2021 and not 2023 or 2024? It takes an enormous amount of work to collect this information, to validate the data. We are working as United Way to try to get this updated every year. We're not there yet, but that's the vision here for the future. Go ahead. So if you look at the federal poverty rate here in St. Croix County, it's 5%, which is really great compared to the rest of the state, which is 11%. So there is poverty here in St. Croix County, and the federal poverty level is what it is. But ALICE is different than that federal poverty level. ALICE is above that federal poverty level. Go ahead. The number of households here in St. Croix County that are considered ALICE, it's another 23%. So who is ALICE? So you've got the federal poverty level, which is that relatively low percentage at 5%. 23%, though, are above that, but they're not at the threshold of where they're making enough money to be able to thrive. And by thrive, I mean to be able to save money for a rainy day, save money for maybe kids' college education. Certainly, they're not making enough money to save for retirement years. And that will have long-lasting repercussions down the road. So if you add those two percentages together, it's 28%. Let's round up and say 3 out of 10 households are struggling here in St. Croix County. I'm going to say that again. 3 out of 10 almost households are struggling in St. Croix County. Does that feel about right? Does it? I don't know. Let me just ask you a question. What is an acceptable percentage of households in St. Croix County that should struggle? Higher number, lower number? I'm hearing 0%. That's the number I would aim for. But we've got more than 10,000 households that are struggling here in St. Croix County, more than 10,000. We'll get into some of the details about who those folks are. But if you're feeling like that's a high number, yes, it is a high number. It's never been this high. It has never been this high. From maybe 2009 or 2010, the number of Alice's, it was going up steadily every year. In 16 and 17, it started to go back down. 18, it was going down a little bit further. But with COVID, it shot back up. And we know that it's in a bad place again right now. So we'll emphasize that we are doing far better than the statewide average, but it's still rough. Let's take a look at some of this information here. I want to just point out, if you look at one of the top lines are the housing figures for rent. If you're a single adult, and if you're a household where you've got two adults and then 2 young kids, those rent figures are old data. I mean, you tell me where you can find a place for 2 adults and 2 kids for $1,200 a month. There's no way. I mean, those days are long gone. We know it's probably closer to $2,000 a month. So this is a survival budget. If you're single, back in 2021, you had to make about $16 an hour just to be able to survive barely. And then if you're that young family, you had to make a combined figure of about $37. But we know that those dollars are low. They're much higher now with number one, with inflation and with housing costs, and we know that child care costs also continue to increase. So these figures are far above those federal poverty levels of $12,800 per year if you're single, and if you're that young family, it's much higher than the $26,500. So of course people are going to struggle. Let's just take a look at some of the households here. The high one for me that always catches my eye is Glenwood City. 61% of the households there are Alice households. 61%. So folks who are in school districts, you know, the superintendents know these Alice families really well because they track fairly closely to the percentage of kids on free and reduced lunches. Here locally, Operation Help knows these families really well as well, just because they're helping these kids and these families all the time. Take a look at some of the other percentages. Hudson Town versus the City of Hudson. The City of Hudson, 35% of the households are Alice. Once you get outside the city, 10%. You know, the way that I think about that is that you've got a lot of folks who are returning back to this area, maybe above age 55, and they've accumulated their wealth and they're wanting to retire here. So it drives down the percentage of Alice outside of the city once you get into the townships. Okay, so if you are single and cohabitating, the good news is that 75% of you are doing well, 3/4 of you. So that's not bad. So 75% of you are not Alice. On the other hand, 25% of you are. 6% of you are at that federal poverty level. Families with kids, 20%, 80% of you are doing well. Here is a startling statistic. 45% of the older adults here in St. Croix County are Alice, 45%, and it explains why we see so many older adults using food pantry services. 45%. So obviously, you know, these are folks who are living on fixed income, Social Security primarily. They're really struggling. They're not thriving. So, you know, what does United Way do to help folks? You know, we've got our own services that we provide to the community. We've got 211 services. Just a quick show of hands is who's heard of 211? So most of you. So it's essentially information and referral. If you're not in an emergency situation, you can call 211. If you are in an emergency situation, call 911. Our staff, and we staff this 24/7, 365 days a year, 366 this year. If you were in a situation where, let's say, your car is broken down, and if you're Alice, you're going to struggle to find a way to get that fixed and pay for it. Let's say you get sick and you can't go to work and you miss a few days of work and you're a server, you're not earning your money, you're not earning your tip money. So you're going to struggle to pay rent at the end of the month because you haven't been able to save up for a rainy day for when those sorts of things happen. So you can call 211 and we will connect you to resources, and we have a limited pot of money ourselves that we can sometimes help you ourselves to get past that one-time financial constraint that you have. Other services that we provide, mental health first aid. This program started a number of years ago after so many kids in Polk County were committing suicide. It just shocked everybody. It shocked the adults going, what in the world is happening here? Nobody was realizing that so many of these kids, some of these families were struggling with mental health concerns. So we've got a team that will go out and train adults in school districts to recognize signs of mental health distress and make the appropriate interventions. And we do that throughout our 4-county area in Pierce, St. Croix, Polk, and Burnett counties. The other service that we provide is called Success by 6, and it's not 6 o'clock at happy hour. It's age 6 for young kids. And so there's a lot that goes into that, especially if you're an Alice family with young kids. One of the things that we discovered through our 211 services, we track that data really well because it really is an excellent window into what the community struggles are. In 2023, the top 2 issues and concerns were housing and being able to pay your utility bills. Those were the top 2 areas. But also mixed in with those calls were young families calling saying, hey, where can we get free diapers or diapers that are at a reduced price? So there were these young families that were having to ration diapers during the day, 1 diaper at night, 1 diaper during the day, and 1 diaper in the afternoon. And so we started diaper bank services. Operation Help does a good job with that here in St. Croix. We help folks in Pierce and Polk counties with that. Last year, we worked with about 170 different families. Many of our community partners contributed tens of thousands of diapers to help these young families just get over the hump. And so we'll help folks 1 or 2 times a month with those needs. And that helps a lot. There are other things that go into that Success by 6 space, but it's really working with those young families just because we know that babies are not born with manuals on how to operate. So we help them understand what does it mean to be a good parent. Reading is foundational in any family. It really sets them up to be successful when they start school in earnest at age 5 and 6. So talking to your baby, singing to your baby, having that culture of reading in your home, that's really what we're trying to foster, particularly with those Alice families, but really families in general. Before you go on to the next one, I'll just lift up some of our nonprofit partners here, and I don't know if you can read them in the back, so I'll mention them. New Family Services, Big Brothers and Big Sisters, CASA of St. Croix County, court-appointed special advocates. Probably you know some of these, but if you have questions about them, I'll answer them to the extent that I can. Fresh Express Community Outreach here in town out of Hudson. Operation Help, I think most people have heard of them. St. Croix Valley Habitat for Humanity, and our sexual assault response teams here that does just heartbreaking and very important work here in St. Croix County. They do the kind of work that people just would never imagine exists and problems that are happening here in St. Croix County you'd never think of. I've got some QR codes here if you want to learn a little bit more about Alice, and there's something called the Alice Challenge. That really is a simulation of what it means to be an Alice family and the tough choices that you have to make every day if you're an Alice family. It'll put you through a series of questions you have to answer, and depending on how you answer, you're either going to have just enough money at the end of the month, or you're not going to have enough money at the end of the month, and then you have to go back and say, okay, what decisions do I need to make that are different to be able to get to the end of the month where we're not going to be in the hole. The other one is just our 211 resource directory. If you're somebody in need of services, check out that directory. No matter where you are in our 4-county area, if there's a need that you're experiencing, whether you're in a bad relationship, whether you're having some financial struggles, you can check that out and you can see all the resources that are available to help you in the moment. All right, that was really a very quick run through about Alice. The fact that there are so many Alices here in St. Croix County, that probably surprised you. If you're like me and think about your own life, many of you probably grew up in an Alice family. We didn't call them Alice families back then. My mom was a radio dispatcher at the little police department in the town that I grew up in. My dad was a factory worker. He worked at Admiral until that factory closed, and they shipped those jobs overseas to Asia, where it was much cheaper to do those productions. We were just a very typical lower middle class family, very blue collar. But today, making those same kind of jobs, there's no way that mom and dad would have been able to raise 5 boys. And we never lacked for clothing, we never lacked for food, but today they need all kinds of public help to be able to do their job as parents. So you might ask, what has happened over that period of time? A lot of complex reasons for why there are so many Alices compared to what it was a couple of generations ago. But there have just been a lot of choices along the way from a public policy standpoint. You look at globalization, you look at housing costs. I grew up in a relatively small house. There were 5 of us, mom and dad and grandma, and usually at least 1 dog and 1 cat in the house at that time. And there were 4 bedrooms, only because mom and dad were able to build out a couple of additional bedrooms in the basement. Otherwise, it was a very full house. They're not like the McMansions that you see today, but they were able to afford that. They took out, I think, a $15,000 or $16,000 loan back in the early 1960s, and then spent the next 30 years paying that loan off. $16,000 loan. Today, I don't know what's housing costs. If you wanted to buy a new house here in St. Croix County, what's the average price? If you're a young family, how are you going to afford that? If you're a young family just starting out, if you're a school teacher, if you're a nonprofit worker, if you're working in one of the manufacturing plants here, how are you going to afford that? How are you going to afford rent? So United Way had a really wonderful staff person. Her husband is a teacher in Hudson School District. On her salary, they were just able to make it on a house that they were able to purchase with a little bit of help from mom and dad on both sides to be able to make that work. They had a baby, and that cost another $10,000 a year in child care costs, and she could not keep that job. She had to get a higher paying job elsewhere. So we lost a really good staff person just because of the housing costs and the child care costs here. And that is a very typical story here for Alice in what's happening here in St. Croix County and counties throughout the state of Wisconsin. Yeah, I think affordable housing is triggering for a lot of people, that nomenclature. I think if we call it workforce housing, that's easier to get our heads wrapped around. Employers can get behind that. Yeah, we need people to do the work. We need, to the extent that we can have them live closer to the work, we know that would be beneficial. So yeah, if we can have employers at the table, especially the larger employers, talking about workforce housing, I think that would be helpful. I have to say United Way has been working at that question for some time, as well as child care. And if you look at the number of Alices that are out there, I think you have to conclude that we have not been doing a good job, to be honest with you.
So there's a new director for the St. Croix County Economic Development Corporation. She was invited to attend tonight, but she had a conflict, so she couldn't be here.
Yeah, I'm having coffee with her next week.
All right. What's your thoughts on, what can we do practically to try and move this forward? Because I understand exactly what you're saying. There are objections to affordable housing. We think it's them, but Alice shows that it's us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is us. Yeah, I think I think if we can take the politics of it and just look at, what's the rational. So backing up, when I was in a different role earlier in my career in manufacturing, if we had one of our lines was producing too much waste, if our machine was not wrapping properly, it was doing it too slowly, we would look at that, we would stop it, we'd understand what's causing the defect, and we'd fix it and move on. I look at Alice as maybe a manufacturing defect. Let's step back, understand what's causing that. What are some solutions that we can bring to the table to fix it? Let's do that and move on. I think we have to have a problem-solving mindset here. If we can have that and be courageous, then we can start the work to fix that problem. Other communities are doing it. You know, I don't have any specifics. I'm not a housing expert. I do know that in other communities, they do have housing authorities that are able to develop more affordable housing options for people. And I think, you know, it's just finding those developers that are willing to partner with you on some of these important projects. I have had partnered in the past with other developers on affordable housing for older adults in other areas. And I mean, they are out there. But the profit motive, I mean, they're not incentivized at this point to be able to come to the table and say, yeah, I'll build some housing and you know, take a haircut on my profit. And you just don't find too many developers who are willing to do that.
Thank you.
Sure. Other questions? Well, I'm grateful for your time here tonight to let me talk to you about Alice and people you're just, oh, there's another hand there.
I was also at the St. Croix County planning meeting or information, and the average income in St. Croix County is really extremely high.
Yeah.
Extremely high. How are you guys doing with donations?
So following COVID, yeah, we're just reconnecting with folks, and donations are about where they were last year at this point. But we've got a lot of work to do to reconnect with our donors, with our stakeholders. So I would say that we're pleased with the progress so far, but we're not there yet. Most campaigns are in the fall. We've come to the conclusion, just because there are so many relationships out there, we're going to have to go to a really more of a year-round model. So we're not just reaching out to folks in the fall. It's an ongoing effort to reconnect with people. So yeah, that's where we're at right now. Related to that question is, are we bringing enough money in to push out to the nonprofits to where they're flush? The answer is hell no. We're not anywhere close to that. I've heard of one United Way where they have so much money come in, they don't know how to distribute it out to the nonprofits. We don't have that problem here. We've got a long way to go yet before we get there, because you have to think about we're in Pierce, St. Croix, Polk, and Burnett counties. And there are counties, I mean, Burnett County, I mean, there are literally more deer than people in Burnett County. So, I mean, there's a lot of relationship building. There are folks up there with affluence, but it's going to take a little bit more effort to get up there so that we can better serve the really critical needs. There are much, much higher incidence of ALICE in needs up in more complex needs up in Burnett County. The further south you go to St. Croix County, the less those needs are, but the needs are still significant here too, with almost 3 in 10 households here in St. Croix being ALICE. Yes?
To follow up, when the tax code changed and people weren't able to deduct their donations for the United Way, did that impact you, and how can people get their donations to you?
We did not notice any impact. Let me ask you, did you all change your philanthropy as a result of that tax code change? No. And most people did not change that. I mean, they're going to give to the nonprofits that they love and support and believe in, and that's what we hope was going to happen, and that is indeed what happened. If you wanted to go to United Way's website, go to unitedwaystcroix.org, unitedwaystcroix.org, and in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see Donate. Just click on that button, and I'll report back here and let you know how many people in this room did that tonight or tomorrow night.
Is St. Croix, you quoted the disproportionate number of us elders in that.
Yeah.
Is that similar to surrounding counties, or is St. Croix County, is that especially high?
It's higher. Yeah, it's higher here for some reason. And I don't know what that is, but yeah. And you saw some of the other smaller outlying counties, or outlying communities, I should say. Some of the more rural communities here in St. Croix County where, yeah, there is more poverty there for that cohort.
Thank you.
Yes. Other questions? Yes, sir.
You mentioned housing for seniors, but what about for younger families just starting?
Yeah, absolutely. So that senior housing project that I mentioned, it was in Altoona, Wisconsin, back in the late 90s. Very successful project. market rate housing, also housing that was affordable for most older adults in that area. Yeah, there needs to be a lot more for youngers. And so some people speculate that maybe there's an opportunity there with older adults here in St. Croix County. Maybe they'd be willing to sell their home to youngers and maybe move into some other kind of housing for themselves. They probably have some house, maybe some land that they own as well that could, they could have a nice profit there perhaps if they decided to structure that deal in a different way. So I think that there are some folks who have some creative ideas, but there's nothing concrete that's on the table that I've heard of yet. But I'll be interested here in hearing the ideas from others here this spring. But because I know that there are a lot of people talking about this problem, a lot of smart people have ideas to help solve the problem.
It creates a problem for the school district too.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. I just don't know what to say about that. There's a discipline called strategic foresight that helps us have a clearer picture of what the future is going to look like here. I know that there are people who are trained in that discipline, who are looking at probable futures here for us, for the school district, what housing is going to look like. I want to talk with them. If you know of any folks in here who have a good insight into what those demographic trends look like that are sort of baked in and what that means for the school district, I'd be interested in hearing about that, because I keep hearing that there are a lot of older folks who are moving in here who are not of childbearing years anymore, who are moving into St. Croix County. What does that mean for the future? Maybe 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now. What's that going to look like?
School board members here, did you guys have anything to say?
So for folks who are on Zoom, the conversation was around people moving into St. Croix County who are older and maybe not from this area, and they don't have the same connections. They're not going to have kids. So what does that mean for the school district's future? What does it mean for our future? Looking at long-term population trends, yeah, it's not just this area or the state. The human population will peak in the next, 75 years or so, and then it's going to start going down as quickly as it went up. Yes?
And I think we can't help but realize that the families that you're talking about, without them, we don't have a healthy community. We don't have a sustainable community. That we need to provide support for families.
Yeah, we'll have to think about how to live our lives differently, or how to maybe educate kids differently. I'm not sure what those answers are, but those challenges are big. We have a lot of smart, caring people working on that. I wish I had all the answers, but I just don't. So all I know is that let's just try to love one another into a good place and try to have the best community we can have.